Thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. As always, make sure you're subscribed and that you're checking out the bell icon down there. There's also a little banner down at the bottom of the screen now where you can actually just click on the banner while you're watching this video and subscribe, especially if you're only here to see Lynne. If you're only here to see Lynne, then you're going to be very happy because we're going to let Lynne do most of her own talking. And as you're watching, Lynne's waving at everybody. She's already better at this than I am. As you're watching, like, comment, and share. Lynne is a friend of a friend, Bella. Bella D'Angelo introduced us because Lynne's running for Attorney General. And I'm just going to be honest. She's already better than the current Attorney General, and she's not even Attorney General yet. But to Lynne's detriment, at the same time, a dead toad on the side of Interstate 95 would be a better Attorney General than the current Attorney General. So, Lynne, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in law, and how. And if I understand, you're mostly a defense attorney, but you don't talk like a lot of defense attorneys. So, how does that happen?
Okay, I'm not sure how most defense attorneys talk, but yeah, my name is Lynne Torgerson, and I'm running for Minnesota Attorney General, and I'm seeking to unseat Keith Ellison. And I essentially grew up in Minnetonka, but moved to Minneapolis probably 40 years ago, roughly, and went to the University of Minnesota and got degrees in political science and psychology, and then attended William Mitchell College of Law. And during law school, just took a criminal law course, took a constitutional law course, and just really sparked an interest in me in constitutional law. I absolutely loved the constitutional rights cases out of the U.S. Supreme Court, which is surprising because they're usually about 50 to 100 pages long. So they're not really fun, light reading, but
that's what you read right before you go to bed.
But I just always loved, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And actually, here's my little pocket constitution, which my criminal law professor gave to me in about 1986. And then here's all my little notes that I took for taking tests and things like that.
That is really cool.
So I actually used that at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals when a constitutional argument there, a Sixth Amendment right of confrontation. But
okay, you just blew right by that. So we're going to go there then. So you argued a what kind of case at the Werritz?
Well, no, I mean, we don't have to get into that case. That'll, it's a rabbit trail, but I had a federal habeas corpus in about 2007. And the case was a Sixth Amendment right of confrontation case. And we actually won it and reversed the Minnesota Supreme Court. And Judge Schiltz was new to the federal bench at that time, and he reversed the 7-justice member of the U.S. or Minnesota Supreme Court, finding essentially that they had come to an unreasonable conclusion of fact and an unreasonable conclusion of federal law. And then the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals upheld that, and then the state again sought certiorari at the U.S. Supreme Court, and that was denied. So we won. Technically, we won at the U.S. Supreme Court as well, although we didn't formally argue. But so that's, a whole nother rabbit trail.
No, that's really, but see, no, that's why, like, this is important. I like people, like, I'm a constitutional law nerd. I don't speak the same language as attorneys, but I read the same things as attorneys. And so this stuff is really cool for me. But actually what I'm finding, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you, was because you are about the Constitution. And that's probably, you're like, of course I'm about the Constitution. I'm an attorney.
Right.
But I think, as you know, and as I interviewed Catherine from Michigan several months ago, she said she's found out that there are a lot of attorneys now going to school. They don't even talk about constitutional law anymore.
Right. No, I had, you know, criminal defense lawyers. I'm a criminal defense lawyer and Second Amendment lawyer. Definitely one of the top, if not the top, Second Amendment lawyer in the state of Minnesota. But criminal defense lawyers, I'd say at least 50% of what they do is just arguing constitutional law issues. And so I was just, that kind of drew me into criminal defense, the constitutional part of it. It's kind of unpopular and people abhor criminal defense attorneys. So I kind of did it in spite of, it not being a real popular thing to do. But criminal defense attorneys are actually hugely beneficial to our country because we protect, freedom of speech,
Yep.
Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, rights against unreasonable searches and seizures, Fifth Amendment right to a fair trial, right to a speedy trial, right to a public trial, fair trial, Sixth Amendment right to counsel, rights against cruel and unusual punishment, equal protection of the law, and due process of law. And then, so I was very drawn to criminal defense because of that, as well as I just was kind of born with a heart of mercy for my clients, insofar as protecting their rights. I don't tell my clients what they did was correct. So largely what, criminal defense attorneys do are just simply protecting, the Bill of Rights and people's constitutional rights, and then seeking mercy on behalf of their clients. And quite honestly, generally speaking, the courts do a pretty good job of both dispensing mercy and justice. I mean, there's always the real rare cases where it's just kind of a disaster or there's some real public kind of heinous case. But one thing I've learned practicing now for, 25, 30 years is you can't, we can prohibit things, but it makes them criminal. It doesn't prevent people from doing them. So people always want a remedy, like we have to outlaw that. Well, it already is outlawed. And, just making a law doesn't prevent people from doing things.
Right.
It just punishes them when they do it. And it's actually a very bad idea to enact legislation for these rare, heinous cases, because then they always end up applying to situations that they were never intended to apply. And they're applied in an overbroad manner. But in any event, so I started working for a criminal defense lawyer in law school. And then after that, after I graduated from law school, I got a job with a federal magistrate out in Los Angeles, kind of a coveted position working for the U.S. District Court. And then was in California about 4 years, came back and opened my own practice, and have had my own successful practice in downtown Minneapolis from 1995 to the present.
It's I don't want people to miss that what Lynne was saying, and she even threw out there that a lot of times, Lynne, you people misunderstand criminal defense attorneys, and a lot of times they either see them as shysters or as there to get guilty people off. And I think if your client's paying you to beat a case, that's what you're getting paid to do. But hearing you talk about it the way that you are, and honing in on the reality of constitutional law and as the supreme law of the land, and saying like, okay, this person might be guilty, but you don't get to strip them of these inalienable rights because, well, they're inalienable.
Correct.
And I don't think people understand that. And I think that's a lot of times when people look at the legal system, they always they tend to want to err on the side of prosecution. And like, if a case is heinous enough, yeah, you really want to see justice done. But if we don't have attorneys like Lynne who are making these arguments in the courts, we're all screwed. Like we're screwed. We like because there's not a single prosecutor out there who just really loves their job that isn't trying to win a case.
Correct.
And
yeah, and we'd be like, the former Soviet Union or North Korea, or China, where you have no rights. And that's how innocent people end up being convicted of things that they, didn't actually do.
Right.
Because these protections aren't involved in the process. And, originally the founders, the burden of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt. And that was put in. The argument used to be that it was better that 99 guilty people went free rather than have one innocent person convicted.
Yep.
So that was the basis. That's the basis of a right to a fair trial, is to prevent innocent people from being convicted.
Yeah, and I think that if you watch around, like state of Minnesota, it's just focusing on Minnesota. We consider success conviction. We just anytime, this person's been charged with something, so they wouldn't possibly charge somebody for something they didn't do. So a conviction's a win, and that's good, and that means the prosecutor's doing their job. And I think we've lost the English common law approach of innocent until proven guilty in the United States. We talk about it, but we don't really approach it that way. And let's use a case like the Chauvin trial. They had him convicted from day one. He was convicted. And you could have been the attorney and stood up and said, like, I can show you in 18 different ways from Sunday that this man's constitutional rights have been violated. And people would say, I don't care, as long as he goes to prison for the rest of his life. Because we've lost touch with the reality of the Constitution protects you in your most vulnerable state. And that's before a prosecutor and before a bench.
Yeah.
And that's what I love to hear you talk about. You had said something in our preparatory conversation the other day that really sparked my interest, because you're a Second Amendment attorney. And you said that you've been arguing a case recently. And I saw news about a case that broke today about the courts saying that you can no longer restrict 18 to 20-year-olds from buying handguns because it's their constitutional right to do so. And they're fully embracing that constitutional right at the age of 18. And so that got me thinking. You said something about the number of people in Minnesota who, according to Minnesota law, which violates the Constitution, there's how many people walking around on average in Minnesota a day that would be considered criminals because of the way the law is written?
Yeah. Yes, I have a case pending in the Minnesota Supreme Court to strike down the carry permit requirement statute on the grounds that it punishes pure Second Amendment behavior. And then on the grounds that essentially if you carry in public without first getting a permit, you're either punished via a gross misdemeanor penalty, or the second one in a life is a felony. So,
which will strip you of your freedom to carry a gun.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so the state, I think it was the County Attorneys Association, responded, and they had in there that, approximately 100,000 people a year get a carry permit, and then a carry permit is valid for 5 years. So roughly 500,000 people, only 500,000 people in the state of Minnesota have a carry permit. And I think the state of Minnesota has, 5.5 million people living in it. And I don't know if that includes children, but given that only 500,000 people have a carry permit, if any one of those people carry without a permit, they can be charged with a gross misdemeanor and/or a felony, which is, absolutely, and that's just pure I mean, we have a right to keep and bear arms. Keep means to possess. Bear means to carry. We have a right to keep them and carry them around, period. And they've criminalized just pure Second Amendment behavior. And we're saying, they can, require a carry permit or require a safety class. And then, mind you, it's $100 when you apply, which is not an inexpensive, fee. And but they certainly shouldn't criminalize the absence of a carry permit. Perhaps they could impose a fine, a civil fine or something like that, but they should not be criminalizing pure people who exercise pure constitutional behavior. And
I want people to understand what you're saying here, because technically, if you throw your firearm in the back of your SUV and you're on your way out to go target hunting, it's a pretty interesting target if you got to hunt it. You're out to go target shooting for fun or for practice or whatever, and you get pulled over and you don't have that weapon stored exactly the right way, you're now a criminal for no other reason than you didn't have the weapon in your vehicle exactly the right way.
Correct.
And that's kind of, if I understand what you're saying, that's kind of what you're saying is there's just purely just putting your gun in your vehicle and not doing it the exact right way. You could go to jail.
Correct.
And
the second time you do it wrong, you're a felon.
Right.
Under Minnesota law. So
having committed no other crime.
Correct. Law-abiding citizens. And I've had a case or more like that. And so we're challenging that law. We're currently waiting for the Minnesota Supreme Court decision. We don't have a lot of optimism with the decision from the Minnesota Supreme Court, but they are kind of in a bind because the enacting legislation says that they're required to treat it according to a strict scrutiny test, which historically no law can pass. And they always fail. But we do want to get to the U.S. Supreme Court and get it struck down. But, it'll be interesting to see what the Minnesota Supreme Court says.
The ruling that came out today, even though it's about age, I think is going to have an impact on a lot of these Second Amendment cases that are out there right now.
Where was that case pending? Was that Minnesota?
No, but don't do that to me. I'm supposed to be asking the question.
Okay. I couldn't remember where it was.
No, I can't remember. I cannot remember the state right now.
I think Firearms Policy Coalition or something is involved with that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it says a lot about the mind of the courts right now. That no, there's a lot of treading. There's a lot of infringing upon that's been happening, and not just because a particular party is in office. It happens in a lot of states, and in what we see a lot of times in legislation is that this legislation that passes that allows things like this to happen. It's not just one extreme leftist group or something else. A lot of times it's happening because they're agreeing to do this stuff together. And we need people like Lynne who are going to stand up and fight for you in private practice. So it's going to be kind of sad when she wins. But
I've been representing, the rights of my clients for 25 years, and I would like to now represent the rights of the good people of the state of Minnesota. And there's a lot more that I can do as Attorney General than I can do in private practice. You have the entire weight of the state of Minnesota behind you as an Attorney General. You have investigators and secretaries and lawyers and sheriff's office and police departments and the BCA.
So so this is a campaign, and The thing that people like to do leading up to elections is they like to pit people from the same perspective against each other so they tear each other apart so that the incumbent a lot of times doesn't get any, doesn't, by the time you get around to fighting the incumbent, you're exhausted and all the bad stuff's already been said about you. But I want to skip the idea of campaigning against another challenger. I want you, and you can take the gloves off. You're not in front of the Supreme Court. You're literally it's just me, you, and the two people that'll watch me. I want you to tell me what handful of things have really moved you to want to unseat the current Attorney General, Keith Ellison. What is it about Keith Ellison? Because I have my own reasons why I want him gone. But what is it that you see that makes you want him out of there?
Well, there's a number of reasons. First, a main issue that I want to attack is the executive orders and peacetime orders issued by Governor Walz. I would want those struck down as unconstitutional, and that legislation, if it's struck down, I suppose we could, actually even just move to strike it down on the grounds that it's unconstitutional, because we aren't supposed to have that form of government. We're supposed to have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And we're not supposed to have a dictator issuing, ruling, one person ruling the state of Minnesota. And two, his orders have been completely unwarranted. According to, statistics, even if people get COVID, they have a 99.997% chance of surviving it. So the orders to begin with are unnecessary. Two, they're not authorized under the statute that they're relying on. And three, they're unconstitutional. Four, they're the most destructive acts, I think, by our government against its own citizens in the history of the United States. It's and then this lawsuits against people, has placed people in fear. It's cost them money. It's cost them their businesses. It's absolutely destructive.
Yep.
And I'm really actually often surprised at the lack of attention that the business owners and landlords have gotten.
Yep.
They've been supporting, the government stayed in business, and the big businesses, I think, the government didn't go after the big businesses because they'd fight back and had the money to do it in court, and they would have lost. So they kind of went after the smaller businesses and just wreaked destruction. And it just makes me really angry to see, what they've done. And and then they gave everybody else unemployment. And it's like, why is nobody talking about the business owners? And, I heard you mention earlier that 40,000 businesses went under. And
it's just an astronomical number.
I would like their letters. I want to read their letters and post them on my website. And I would like to get them, under the law. The lockdown orders were, at least arguably a taking under the Fifth Amendment by the government against business owners. And in that situation, the government is required to compensate them for the fair market value of their businesses. And so I think, that lawsuit should be brought, and people are probably going to object. Well, that's going to cost the state way too much money.
Then rein in your elected servants.
Exactly. And, and first of all, let's just do what's right. I mean, they've been able to pay for unemployment, extra unemployment, taking care of, millions of people along those lines. So let's just do the right thing as far as as people's rights go. And this is actually, this is the American dream. This is actually the American dream. Like, people have been moving here for, decades or hundreds of years to leave their life of poverty, come here and be able to, start a business or get employment or go to school. And this is, all of the lockdown orders were just, they destroy business ownership, they destroy property ownership, and the bottom line is they need to be stopped. And that's one thing I would like to do in office.
Let me ask this before you go on to the next point. The role of an attorney general, and I don't think people understand this, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but the role of the attorney general is not to sit there and rubber stamp everything the governor does. They're two elected positions, and they're supposed to be representing we the people. And so when you have an attorney general who is not looking these things over and saying, all due respect there, Mr. Governor, Mrs. Governor, I think you're making a really bad decision, and I don't think you should do this because I don't think that we can defend this from a legal perspective. Isn't that really kind of the role of the attorney general? It's not just to say, okay, Gov, whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't, quite honestly, I think a lot of, I don't think the attorney general and governor really consult on all that much.
It sure feels like they have been.
Well, no, I think these two I think these two have worked more closely together, Ellison and Walz, than typical. But usually, the governor is just approving or disapproving laws enacted by the legislature, and then the attorney general, generally, most of them have been pretty quiet. And I think it may be because typically they haven't, I've been working in the bowels of the courthouse for 25, 30 years. And so I've been litigating, and I've had tremendous amount of experience in the courtroom, where I think most past attorney generals have not. They've probably been more in the political realm. And so I don't know if they've really known how to, litigate a case or things like that. And so I think it would be a tremendous boon to the office to have, a criminal defense attorney who knows how the courts work, so that they can put together a case and know how it works and actually bring it and win them, which is a pretty, a lot of lawyers never even see a courtroom in their career. And so I think I can bring that to the table. And then I'd also, I would like to prohibit mandatory vaccines from both businesses, airlines, government, whoever is seeking that. And then I also just simply want to remove Keith Ellison from government. He's not an appropriate person to have in our government.
Is it? Because some people are going to hear that and go, "Oh, well, it's personal." And I think, like, honestly, you don't run against somebody and not have a personal reason for doing it. But
well, it's ideological.
It's ideological, and that's what I
know him on a personal basis, but
right.
I'm a Christian, you're a Christian. We're to love the Muslim people. But I think it's also important to note that he refused to, take his oath on the Bible. He took it on a Quran. And Sharia law is inconsistent with the United States Constitution. And if you look around the earth, how many majority Muslim countries allow freedom of religion?
Yeah, no.
None come to my mind. And so I don't think, and people object and say, oh, you can't have a religious test. Well, yeah, I'm not going to give him a religious test, but that doesn't mean we have to vote him in and have him elected into government office. So because of his ideological values, I don't think he's appropriate to have in our government, because his fundamental beliefs conflict with our U.S. Constitution.
The values of the republic, absolutely. And I look at the reality of the name that just came into the news here the last week. July 4th, John Thompson gets pulled over, immediately goes out and starts airing his grievances to the media like he likes to do, and made himself a victim, claimed that he was pulled over for profiling. Opens his mouth, finds out that was a bad idea for him, because that opened a can of worms. And here's a man who probably isn't qualified to be in office. There's something shady going on there. Who was endorsed by both of our sitting governor and our attorney general, who doubled down on endorsing him by refusing to rescind their endorsement after he went to Hugo, Minnesota, and threatened to burn Hugo to the ground if they didn't get rid of Bob Kroll and his wife. Now, people are going to be like, well, you're kind of trying to draw some links there, TC. But I think what Lynne said, and I appreciate you saying it, is that, look, you're free to practice your religion, but when you bring twisted values and twisted ethics, regardless of your religion, into your office, and it's so fundamentally part of who you are, that you can't look at a man like John Thompson, who's running for office, threatens to burn down a city because he doesn't like a guy that lives there, and then pulls what he pulled this last week, and you still won't speak out. As the sitting attorney general, we have a problem. Definitely. We have a big problem.
Yeah, the United States provides the greatest protection of freedom of religion probably anywhere on earth. So, we allow people to practice whatever religion they want and worship whatever God that they want, unlike majority Muslim countries. And as I mentioned, Sharia law is inconsistent with the U.S. Constitution. There aren't constitutional rights in majority Muslim countries. So we're actually the most trustworthy country along those lines on earth. But that does not mean that we elect them to office and that they should be in the U.S. government or state government. And so, in addition to his, and now he's suing American citizen business owners for working at their businesses on the grounds that they, allegedly violated Governor Walz's orders. So whose rights? He's not protecting American citizens' rights. He's actually bringing suits against them.
Oh, he's there again. He's in cahoots with Walz. He's there. There's been no stepping back and going, okay, Gov, probably not a good idea for us to be doing this. I have observed numerous hearings in courtrooms over the last year where business owners like Lisa Hanson from the Interchange and Lisa Monet and Larvita and others have had the Attorney General's office in the local courtroom arguing against the defendants. Not just writing down to the attorney from the county or the city or whatever it might be and saying, hey, we're going to support you on this, but they are literally sending attorneys in to argue against Lisa Hanson from the Attorney General's office. And there again, you're not protecting the rights of the people.
Well, they're not protecting, they're not protecting the constitutional rights, and I have to be, quite honestly, very careful about
I understand
how I phrase things, given the supervisory people who will watch what I say.
I absolutely understand that. I'm pretty milquetoast, so I'm not gonna. We're not gonna like get you bombed or anything. So
No, I mean, I'm talking about positions of authority in the government
yep.
who don't, who supervise, renters licenses and doctors licenses and lawyers licenses and liquor licenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also, like to look into that and see what can be done about protecting just licenses of citizens in their ability to earn a living.
Go ahead.
The attack on licenses has
Mm-hmm.
been, in my opinion, appalling.
I had a conversation with the other day with the two leases in Larvita, and one of the things that was mentioned was that when they stripped Lisa Monet, the now former owner of the Alibi and Froggy Bottoms in Northfield, the city council of Northfield told Lisa Monet, we have a city council. I told her that basically she was a morally reprehensible person and therefore unqualified to have a business license. I want people to hear this because they heard me say it in that conversation, but I want people to hear what Lynn was saying, what you were saying, Lynn, and what I'm saying. That's the lengths that they will go to silence people who disagree with them. We're going to use language that makes us sound like we're the good guy because it's in the law without any thought or consideration as to whether or not it's valid and it's okay for them to literally do that to a person.
It's heartbreaking.
Right. And
heartbreaking what they've done to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would like to bring lawsuits to both prevent that in the future, seek recompense for what's already happened. And, quite honestly, somebody should look into the ruling of the Northfield City Council.
Yeah, so you were aware of that ahead of time, I would imagine.
Well, I watched the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sending me the link. And those are actually the people that I've been wanting to hear from. And I want to invite the 40,000 business owners to send me letters about what's happened to them. And
if we could get 5,000 to do it.
Right. And, there's people who have remained in business, who have survived, but it cost them a lot of money. A lot of people barely made it. I've talked to cleaners and gymnastic. Some people, it just caused them like extreme mental anguish.
Yes.
And this really needs to be addressed, and it needs to be stopped. And I hope that the general populace can get on board and not just think about themselves. Well, I'm fine now, or my job, or we need to protect these people as well, just to preserve our republic and our way of life and things like that.
I want people to hear that, Lynn, like what she just said. If you're one of those 40,000, and now whether it's been 40,000 businesses, and I think it was one of the ladies in the conversation, I think it might have been Lisa Hansen. So like 40,000 are gone, washed away, wiped off the face of the state of Minnesota. But I don't care at what level you're impacted. If you've had to lay off a bunch of people and now you can't afford to open up your store again because there's no business, or your eatery or whatever it is, if you've closed your business, if my friend Melissa from the I think it's Baby Girls Boutique, she had opened 2 businesses, had to close one of them, and the other one was struggling, and she came under assault from the media, or not media, but from the public, because she dared to say she was going to keep her business open. And if you've been negatively impacted as a business owner in the state of Minnesota, Lynne is begging you to reach out to her. She
Yeah.
will platform you.
Yeah.
She wants to hear your story. That's why we have the website up there. And if you miss the website for some reason, you don't get it, you contact me or look her up online. She will listen to your story, write her a letter, write her an email, message her, something. Because that's where that's what people like Lynne are for. They're for representing the people.
Yeah.
Like we're the government. All those people sitting in all of those buildings out there, that's not the government. Those are people who work for the government, and that's you and me. And Lynne recognizes that. And that's why I wanted to talk to her and have her on, because I heard that in the very first few minutes of the conversation that we had on the phone the other day. It's like, here's a person who's like, no, it's about the Constitution. It's about we the people, and it's about making sure they're represented. Lynne, when you win, would you be willing to stand up and say, I will never, as Attorney General, I shouldn't say never because there can always be something. Would you be willing to say, as Attorney General, I will fight as hard as I can to not only have these laws that allow for these emergency powers under a peacetime, have those removed, but I will do my level best to stand in the way of any governor, Republican or Democrat, who would dream of doing this again. I will fight them tooth and nail. That's the closest to a gotcha I'm going to give you.
I mean, there's ways of, my goal is to strike down the legislation that allows these peacetime orders and executive orders. Our government isn't set up that way. That's not how we're supposed to enact laws. I mean, it needs to be stopped at the presidential level. It needs to be stopped at the state level. And, we're always glad, Trump did this and that. And, because we got some things that we wanted, but we really, regardless of who it is, we need to stop it because it's too much. The founders wanted to disperse power and have everything work very slowly. And, they separated the balance, the hands of power so that it wouldn't be in one, no one person could have too much power to protect us from, actually this very thing. So, I'm definitely going to work to get those sorts of laws struck down as unconstitutional.
Yeah, I think that's what people out there who maybe aren't as vocal and as active really need to hear. Like that's her goal. I mean, obviously she's going to have other jobs to do as Attorney General, but that has to be a focus because, like you said earlier, so it doesn't happen again. Because right now, where we sit, and we talked about this just a little bit the other day, where we sit right now, nothing's fixed because he could come out tonight and say, well, these new variants are going to be really dangerous, and before they hit, we're just going to go ahead and shut everything down again.
And they want to do it. I think they want to do it with climate change crisis.
Everything's an emergency now.
And I think they want to try and do it with Second Amendment. And so, it's a very, very bad precedent that's been established, and people don't realize how just harmful and dangerous it actually is. Because if they can do that, then they can do it, for anything. So, and they want to.
I know that we're coming up on kind of your cap because you said you could do about an hour. And so I want to ask one question and this because I don't know. I honestly don't know. And so as having been in law and practicing, as you said earlier, in the bowels of the courthouses across the state, is there a role for the attorney general in a situation like we're seeing now especially the major metro areas of the state, where we're seeing a spike in crime, 105% increase in gun violence in the Twin Cities alone, and a 70% increase in general criminal violence over the last year? Is there a role for the attorney general in that situation, for the attorney general, whoever it is, if they were doing their job, to speak out on that and to take some initiative?
Yeah, I mean, people say that, the attorney general's office is the chief law enforcement officer of the state, but it actually is not. Under the current way things are set up, attorney generals can only prosecute criminal actions that are referred to them by the county attorney's offices. So they generally cannot just initiate a prosecution on its own authority. The law enforcement is supposed to be handled by the police, the local police department, which are run by cities. So I do support funding the police. I do support public safety. And I think we need to be taught to respect law enforcement. And there's biblical principles for that. So, and that talk about, that essentially all government offices have been ordained by God, and resistance to, civil authority brings damnation upon yourself. So,
and she's referring to places like Romans 13, yeah, where what we see is, like, government's role is to reward good and punish evil. And so if, yeah, you're doing good, the government shouldn't be punishing you. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
And if you're doing evil, you should be afraid. Does that also sound familiar? Because right now it's exactly the opposite in the state of Minnesota. Good people who are doing good, whether they're Christian or not, are in absolute terror of the government right now, coming in and stripping them of everything they have, while criminals are running free. Sorry, Lynn, I just had to.
No, I understand. And yeah, it's the reason the spike in crime. And I think the governor and the Mayor Fry and the governor should have brought in the National Guard before they burned down the police precinct and before they burned down the businesses. Rather, they waited 3 days until all the destruction was wrought, and then they brought them in and shut everything down. And they could have done that 3 days earlier. But, the primary...
They knew there was going to be trouble, and they did nothing.
And but the reason the spike in crime is because they've made threats of defunding the police and things, and then hundreds of police officers have left, and so there aren't enough police officers to police the communities anymore. And so people call 911 in Minneapolis. I heard they're on hold for like 45 minutes. And so I don't know if that's true or not.
I've heard some of those numbers too, and that in some cases calls are going 2 hours, not actual calls, but by the time an officer arrives on scene, it could, in some situations, it could be up to 2 hours for some cases.
So, we need to, I would encourage patriots to, remain police officers, remain in the military, return to those posts, because we need them in our police departments and our military. And but that's the primary reason, is because there's just not enough police to be able to monitor all the bad behavior.
Yep. And that's why I asked the questions, because I'm glad that you clarified that the Attorney General in the state of Minnesota is not the chief law enforcement officer.
Well, they are, but
But not in the sense of they can go around giving orders to every little small town cop and.
right. Yeah, we can't hire police. We can't fire police.
Oh, but we sure threaten to prosecute every dirty cop based on whatever we determine dirty is when we're Keith Ellison.
Well, yeah, Keith Ellison, wants to prosecute police.
Yeah, he campaigned on that.
I don't want to prosecute police.
That shouldn't even be the job of the Attorney General's office unless it's such a failure at whatever level they're at.
Well, it's not yet. They've had to have these cases referred to them, and they're trying to change the law to make it so that the Attorney General probably automatically handles the prosecution of police. So those cases, if that goes through,
it's 6 o'clock.
Then they'd be handled by the Attorney General's office. So it would become more important to the Attorney General insofar as those cases are concerned.
Absolutely. Well, Lynn, I heard your reminder. So I really appreciate your time. And as the campaign heats up, as things get going, if you have more things you'd like to say or get out there, especially if you start hearing from business owners, and I think we're going to try and make that happen. I think we'll do our level best to try and make this happen for you so that you can have that. I think that's going to be a really good tool in your pocket. I'd love to be able to sit down with you again as this heats up. Not that you'll have time here in a little while, but so thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on board, and you go fight, win. Like, if Bella likes you, there must be something okay about you. So
well, thank you for having me. It's been a privilege to be here.
Well, I am going to boot you out so you can go eat dinner or something, and I'm going to finish up. So thank you very much, Lynn. Good luck with your campaign.
Thank you, TC.
You have a great night. God bless.
Thank you.
Well,
God
you
bless.
heard it there. She wants to defeat Keith Ellison, and I think that should be on like the forefront of everybody's mind. And I know that there are other people who are talking about running for Attorney General, and they all want to defeat Keith Ellison as well. Check out Lynn's campaign. Go to her website. If you are a small business owner, if you are a Lisa Hansen or a Larvita McFarquhar or a Lisa Monet Zarza, if you are Jane from Fargo. Oh, she's not in Fargo. Jane Moss. Yes, there we go. If you're one of those business owners that has been negatively impacted, if you've lost your business, you had to close your businesses because of what's happened, please reach out to Lynn. Tell her your story. Let's give her some ammunition to take into this fight against Keith Ellison. No matter what, Keith Ellison has to come down out of that office. Not in a violent way, but no matter what, we've got to get Ellison out of there because he is radically dangerous for the United States. He's just radically dangerous. He can do no good for us. None. And when I say United States, I mean that because this is a stepping stone for him. He is going to try and use this to launch himself into a federal position. And the last thing we need is somebody who has radical views. And he does. He has incredibly radical views. He wants to prosecute law enforcement. That's his one of his stated goals is he wants to prosecute. Not I want to prosecute bad cops. He wants to prosecute law enforcement. He despises law enforcement. He despises the American way of life. He has said as much. He is a hardcore leftist, and Lynn wants to oppose that, and she does oppose that. She's not requiring that anybody be a Christian to be in this country. She's just saying certain ideological views are going to be dangerous because they don't mesh with the republic. And the views of a guy like Keith Ellison do not mesh with this republic. And it's time that we have somebody that can take him on and is going to do it. And Lynn brings experience. She brings a lot of experience, years and years and years in the courts, making the arguments and fighting for justice and fighting for constitutional liberties. So, like I say at the end of every one of my videos, until next time, don't worry about your safety. Don't worry about your comfort. Fight for your liberties, fight for your freedoms, and sic semper tyrannis.